happened over in New York. And we were part of a recovery team. We got given £40 million by the government to kind of reinvigorate tourism coming back to the UK after those attacks, because it really was a kind of an earth-shattering moment for kind of global tourism market. As part of the campaign work, we did a survey in America 3 months after the attack and said, kind of, what are your kind of three kind of biggest concerns about coming to the UK on holiday? And we expected them to come back, well, you know, flights and type of thing. They came back and said, basically, it's too expensive, the weather's crap, and the food's crap. Didn't mention terrorism at all. And it just shows you kind of how the tourism industry is able to kind of bounce back from things. Right. I'm going to be talking, well, I'm going to have a bit of a bitzer of a presentation today. A little bit about trends and then a bit about the package travel regulations, including some homework, so have pens at the ready. First of all, Tourism Alliance, we're an umbrella trade association for the tourism industry. We have 55 member organisations, and it's basically bringing together the inbound, the outbound, the domestic industry to talk to government with a single voice, so that government has the confidence to know what the tourism industry is thinking on any particular issue. So kind of my job is hanging around kind of Westminster annoying people. Actually, just before I go into that, if you want to blag your way in tourism, there are only 3 figures you ever need to know, okay? The first figure is 1.3, and that is the price elasticity of inbound tourism to the UK. So you take any exchange rate change, you kind of multiply it by 1.3, and you get the impact on revenue to the UK. So for example, after Brexit, the pound decreased kind of about 15% against kind of trade-weighted average. If you divide that by, times that by 1.3, you get 20%. So you should get a 20% increase in inbound revenue to the UK. Now, you won't get all that in the first year because people have already booked their holidays, they have other commitments. Not everyone around the world follows the kind of pound exchange rate on a daily basis. So you expect that change to happen over about 3 years, and with about half the change in the first year, and then kind of a decreasing amount until things stabilise. The second kind of figure you need to know is 0.8, and that is the price elasticity of domestic tourism. So again, same thing, if kind of the pound goes down against kind of other currencies in the world, you times kind of that decrease by 0.8 and it gets you the increase in domestic revenue. So all things being equal, 15% decrease, times it by 0.8, you get kind of 12, and you should get a 12% increase in domestic tourism revenue. Now, most of that does happen over the first year because kind of people living in the UK know what the pound is doing. So you would expect kind of a 10% increase in domestic tourism. The third figure that you need to know to blag your way anywhere in tourism is 54,000. So 54,000 is the amount of additional revenue that creates an extra job in the tourism industry. So it's the marginal cost of employment in the tourism industry. So any 54,000 increase in domestic, overseas revenue coming into the country will create one full-time equivalent job. So kind of you do the maths on those figures, and we would expect kind of around 100,000 new jobs to be created in the tourism industry this year, which are pretty big numbers. Now we'll show the reality of the situation. On the inbound side, the predictions are actually pretty much perfect. At the moment, these are the latest figures. We're seeing about a 9% increase in revenue to the UK at the moment. Forward bookings are looking very good. That should hold up to the end of the year. If it does, that's an additional £2.5 billion coming into the UK economy. And the really bright amongst you, because I know you're all bright, will be able to divide 2.5 billion by 54,000. Yes, you will, won't you? Okay, it's basically just under 40,000 new jobs. So, you know, we're on track just on inbound tourism alone to create just under 40,000 new jobs this year. Domestic, that's really surprising us. It's not doing what we would expect. We kind of expected up to 10%. It's -3, but that's just to May, so we don't really know kind of what's going on over the kind of the height of the summer season. The indication I'm getting from the industry is that kind of it's a lot better than that, maybe not 10%, but maybe kind of 5-6% up. We'll see at the end of the year. But one of the real pressures on that at the moment is because inflation is well above people's average wage earnings, which is actually suppressing their ability to spend money on holidays. So even though kind of it's more expensive to go overseas, they still can't afford to holiday at home. Day visits, interestingly enough, down 1%. There may be an argument to say that people are downgrading because of the pressure on disposable income from taking a holiday to taking more day trips. We will see how that goes when the figures come out for the end of the year. So that's kind of generally what's happening at the market at the moment. Let's go on to talk about a few trends. What do people want? Kind of key to this is safety. Safety has kind of come through as one of the overwhelming themes over the last few years. People are going to destinations where they feel safe. This is especially so when it comes to people with families. You're seeing it on the outbound market, going to near Europe destinations rather than far Europe destinations. And we're seeing it very much in the domestic market as well, where kind of cities are struggling, but rural and seaside destinations are doing very well because people perceive that they're away from where people congregate. Added value, kind of, we're 10 years kind of after the global economic crisis. We're still not out of the woods yet. People's incomes are still incredibly squeezed. And kind of they're looking for bargains, they're looking for added value. It's very difficult to get kind of someone to buy something at full value at the moment. They're looking kind of where the offers are. And increasingly businesses have trained people to do that as well, knowing that kind of they can hold off on a purchase till the last moment because they'll get a deal. People are also after authentic. It's kind of one of those interesting things as the world's become a smaller place and everyone's online, everyone can see everyone doing everything, that kind of places have, everyone feels like they know a place even if they haven't been there because they've seen so many images of it. So what people are after are kind of authentic experiences. It's a kind of more homogenous world. They're after something that's different from what everyone else has been able to do. And this kind of leads to trophy hunting. And the trophy hunting used to be, I went to the Eiffel Tower, here's my photo of the Eiffel Tower. Well, everyone knows what the Eiffel Tower looks like. That's really not important anymore. But if you see a picture of yourself buying a lobster from a local fisherman down in Cornwall, now that's an authentic experience. That's a bit of trophy hunting because how many of your mates have done that? So that's what people are after. They want to Skype, boast about what they've done. They want to have that shot, that picture, that experience that all their friends haven't done. And because everyone holidays more, it's increasingly hard to find those experiences, those photos that people haven't done before. But that is exactly what they're after. So what are they doing? City breaks, for the first time ever last year in Europe, city breaks overtook seaside breaks for the entire European market. So more people now going to cities than to the seaside in summer. A lot of that being driven by cheap airlines, but importantly, this is kind of where kind of the young people are going, it's where the young couples are going, people without kind of children, very much city break orientated, whereas families still very much orientated towards rural seaside experience. Some of that's safety, some of that's kind of reliving their past. This is where their parents took them on holiday, so they're kind of having a second childhood by taking their children there. I'll do more and less first. Kind of basically, people are trying to treat themselves at the moment. Times are tough. There isn't a lot of disposable income. So I had heard someone explain it the other day, like having a sweet jar, and you just kind of take out a sweet every now and again to cheer yourself up. So you're taking short, sharp holidays as a bit of a treat rather than kind of one long summer break these days. And because you're doing kind of more, but for very short times, people are staying put. So it's a lot harder these days to get people to travel away from the gateway into the destination that they got to. They don't tend to travel around from destination to destination. That takes time. They're going in, sampling an area, then coming back home again. So that's the kind of trend stuff. Now we'll go on to the package travel regulations. Anyone know about the package travel regulations? Apart from Tui here, which will obviously know it. Package travel regulations, basically European Consumer Protection Regulation or law, which defines a package of anything of accommodation, transport, or other tourism service. Any two of those together, it's a package, you're a tour operator. This is incredibly beneficial if you're a customer of Monarch. Because it means two things. It means that you get repatriated back into the UK. It's someone else's problem how to get home, not your own. The other kind of good thing about it is if you're going overseas on holiday, you fall off the balcony of your hotel in Benidorm, you don't have to sue the hotel in Benidorm through the Spanish legal system. You have someone back in the UK where you bought the product that is responsible for the product, and you take up the matter with them. The real problem with this is there's really poor kind of drafting legislation over in Europe. So what it means is that if you're providing accommodation and other tourism service, you get deemed to be a tour operator. So if you're, for example, a bed and breakfast and you want to kind of do an added value product for your customer, because that's what customers want, and you go to the local historic house next door and you say, you know, let's wrap this up together, stay at my place for £100, I'll give you a couple of tickets to the historic house across the road. That's kind of a good little bonus for your customer. Problem is that the bed and breakfast place is now a tour operator, and it is legally responsible for anything that happens to the customer while they're at the historic house. So if they fall down a staircase, it's the B&B that gets sued. And that's really detrimental to small businesses in the domestic side working together. Now, there's new package travel regulations being developed at the moment, which will kind of come due in 2014. So European legislation, 2008. European legislation, we've got to implement it by September 2018, which the really smart amongst you will know is before 2019, which is when we leave the EU. So we've got to implement all this EU legislation kind of 6 months before we actually leave the EU. So what we're doing at the moment is trying to get government to realise that when we leave the EU, we should keep the legislation as it applies to people taking travel and travelling in and out of the country because they really need the consumer protection. But on the domestic side, kind of make it so that these small businesses can work together, provide kind of added value products, and therefore boost tourism. So we undertook some research. Basically, 50% of businesses say that they don't sell added value products because of the package travel regulations. 75% say they would if the package travel regulations didn't apply for them. And that there would be a 9% increase in revenue. So you do the maths on that, it ends up being kind of £2.2 billion additional domestic tourism expenditure you would expect each year, and about 40,000 additional jobs. And the great thing is there's no problem to the consumer, because if you fall down the staircase at the historic house, you would just sue the historic house rather than the B&B. So this is where the homework comes in. There's an email there, package travel consultation at bays.gov.uk. Send them an email and just say, when we leave the EU, how about defining a package as something that kind of must include transport? Just a very simple thing to do. It would help the domestic tourism industry enormously, and it would kind of help businesses that are looking to kind of package up products in the UK as well. Thank you.